Let's begin with breaking updates now coming in. The Prime Minister's action-packed day in Paris with the Prime Minister addressing India-France CEO Forum. Making in India push as well. The Prime Minister speaking about the time being right to invest in India. Later, while addressing the India-France CEOs Forum, Prime Minister Modi made a strong pitch for businesses to come to India, saying this was the right time to invest in the country.
रिफॉर्म, परफॉर्म, ट्रांसफॉर्म के पथ पर चलते हुए आज भारत विश्व की 5वीं सबसे बड़ी इकोनॉमी है। विश्व की सबसे तेजी से ग्रो करने वाली मेजर इकोनॉमी है। जल्द ही दुनिया की तीसरी बड़ी इकोनॉमी बनने जा रहे हैं। आज भारत तेजी से पसंदीदा ग्लोबल इन्वेस्टमेंट डेस्टिनेशन बनता जा रहा है। मैं आप सबको कहता हूं कि भारत में आने का यही समय है, सही समय है।
And well, with that, let's get you more breaking updates now coming in. The Prime Minister has spoken about Veer Savarkar's bravery, saying it inspires us. And he is currently in Marseille. The Prime Minister is in Marseille, in Paris, in France, for the last leg of his tour. And the Prime Minister has tweeted, here's what he says: landed in Marseille in India's quest for freedom, this city holds a special significance. So he has spoken about Veer Savarkar. He goes on to say, it was here that the great Veer Savarkar attempted a courageous escape. I also want to thank the people of Marseille and the French activists of the time who demanded that he not be handed over to the British custody. Then he goes on to say the bravery of Veer Savarkar continues to inspire generations. So a tribute to Savarkar coming in from the Prime Minister, and this is coming in from France. Now let's get you the itinerary of the Prime Minister. Was on the Prime Minister's schedule. Remember, it's a 2-day visit to France, but it's going to be a very packed visit. The Prime Minister will be visiting first the war cemetery in France to pay tributes to over 1,000 Indian soldiers who have been cremated there. And the Prime Minister, as well as the French President, will also be holding a wreath-laying ceremony at the cemetery. And the Prime Minister will also jointly inaugurate an Indian consulate. So this is the first Indian consulate in France. It's going to be a very big moment for the Indian diaspora in France. The Prime Minister will also be visiting the ITER site today and will be at the thermonuclear experimental reactor, which is a significant step in harnessing nuclear energy for global good. And this project, several projects also will be spoken of between the two leaders. The project seeks to provide unlimited supply of clean energy. All right, with that, let's shift our attention now. It was an action-packed day for the Prime Minister in Paris yesterday. So let's get you what happened yesterday. We spoke about what's on the agenda today. Let's also speak about what happened yesterday in Paris, with the Prime Minister participating in a number of crucial engagements. The Prime Minister also co-chaired the AI Action Summit with the French President Emmanuel Macron and called for an investment in skilling and reskilling people for an AI-driven future. The Prime Minister also sought to address concerns of many who feel that AI will lead to job cuts.
We must develop open source systems that enhance trust and transparency. We must build quality data sets free from biases. We must democratize technology and create people-centric applications. We must address concerns related to cybersecurity, disinformation, and deepfakes. Friend, loss of jobs is AI's most feared disruption. But history has shown that work does not disappear due to technology. Its nature changes and new types of jobs are created. We need to invest in skilling and reskilling our people for an AI-driven future.
In fact, the U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance was also all praises for Prime Minister Modi for his assurance to those fearing AI disruption in jobs. Vance said that he appreciated the Prime Minister's point that AI will facilitate and make people more productive and will not replace human beings. Listen in.
I appreciate Prime Minister Modi's point. AI, I really believe, will facilitate and make people more productive. It is not going to replace human beings. It will never replace human beings. And I think too many of the leaders in the AI industry, when they talk about this fear of replacing workers, I think they really miss the point. AI, we believe, is going to make us more productive, more prosperous, and more free.
So after wrapping up his France visit today, the Prime Minister will be headed to the United States. And this is a very significant visit. This is the first visit of the Prime Minister to the United States under Trump 2.0 administration. So this will be an official working visit of the Prime Minister to the United States at the invitation of President Donald Trump. During this two-day visit, the focus will be on bolstering ties and unlocking new avenues of cooperation. Prime Minister Modi will hold bilateral meeting with President Trump in both restricted as well as a delegation level format. And he will also be interacting with business leaders as well as members of the Indian community during the visit. The Prime Minister and President Trump, remember, do share a very good rapport, as has been witnessed during the Prime Minister's two visits to the United States during Trump's first term. Now, this meeting between the two leaders will be an opportunity to further strengthen the ties between the two nations, with focus expected to be on trade, investment, technology, defense and energy cooperation. Let's go across to Senior Executive Editor Madhav Das Gopalakrishnan joining us on the broadcast. He's joining us from the United States. Madhav, it's a good morning here. A very packed visit of the Prime Minister likely, and this is a very significant visit, being the first after Trump 2.0 takes over. What is to look forward to? What are the key agendas on this meeting?
Well, good evening from Washington, D.C. And clearly, of course, as you rightly put it, President Trump's second tenure is when, of course, Prime Minister Modi is coming here. And he's one of the first few international leaders to be meeting with President Trump here in Washington. We've seen, of course, leaders from Israel and Japan visit, and Prime Minister Modi amongst the first few to actually meet with President Trump. Now, of course, the two leaders have a huge personal bonhomie. We've seen that in the first tenure of President Trump, and that, of course, only expected to continue building up from there, hitting the reset button in that sense, and once again going ahead as far as business is concerned between the two countries. Also very important that when it comes to defense, when it comes to strategic affairs, a lot of convergence on a number of issues as far as US and India are concerned. All of that only expected to continue. The big ticket announcements could be in the areas of defense procurements, of military procurements and defense hardware, something that US has also very clearly indicated it wants India to do, and India perhaps expected to look at that. The finer details of exactly what is being spoken about, perhaps we will only know once that meeting is concluded. But yes, there are areas of concern for the two countries as well. One, of course, is trade and tariffs, and the other, of course, is immigration, and both countries have articulated their positions on the same. Now, while India has accommodated some of US's concerns in the budget by giving some concessions to several US companies as well, will that be enough? Is there something more that President Trump wants? Because he has clearly indicated that he wants investment to be a two-way street. It's not just about US companies investing in India. He also wants Indian companies to be investing in US and, of course, purchasing more of US products. So how much really of that will be accommodated? What is the position position that will be taken by both countries so that both of their concerns are allayed at the best way possible. All of these are going to be announcements that we'll perhaps only know once the meeting is concluded, and that's expected to in fact be announced at a press conference on the 13th evening, that is of course day after tomorrow evening, once the bilateral meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Donald Trump is concluded.
Okay, all right. Madhav, thank you for joining us with those details. There are some areas of concerns for the ties between India and United States, but it's a strong relationship. And it's not just about trade, tariff, immigration and strategic ties which will be in focus. Like we've said, both the countries are also trying to unlock new avenues of cooperation. They're deepening their collaboration when it comes to the space sector, with many ambitious joint projects in the running. Times Now's senior executive editor Madhav Das also spoke to the NASA scientist. For more on this, listen in.
We're here in Washington, D.C. to talk to Dr. Amitabh Ghosh, who's a very prominent space scientist, not just about the Indian space program or the U.S. space program, but remember that this is one area where there's been a tremendous amount of cooperation between the two countries. How do we take this forward, particularly with India's privatization push and also, of course, Elon Musk's own contributions, which have reduced the cost of space transport drastically? Thank you so much for speaking to us, Dr. Amitabh Ghosh. Let me begin by asking you, we're at a time when Prime Minister Modi is, of course, scheduled to visit Washington, D.C. There's going to be a bilateral meeting. On the issue of space, on the area of space, we've seen a lot of cooperation in the past. What really are the expectations and the areas where the two countries can work more closely in the future?
I think one area is planetary science, where India is interested, and the U.S. obviously has a long-form capability. And then you will see very soon, next month, there is a mission called NISAR being launched, which is a India-U.S. The U.S. end is JPL, and the India end is, of course, ISRO. That is going to do Earth-based studies. So there is a lot of avenues for collaboration, a lot of dialogue going on. India is trying to obviously have, so India, I think Chandrayaan 3 is on the works, and then there's talk of sample return. There's another landing on Mars. Chandrayaan
3 is the one that landed on the moon. Chandrayaan 4 is
Chandrayaan 4, sorry, yeah. Chandrayaan 4. So you know, there is a lot of plans from the India end. So you have to look for synergies where there is a common interest. But because the U.S. is right now trying to go back to the moon, this time with human beings. So that's a big thing, Artemis program. That is where a lot of the funds are allocated. And then, of course, the U.S. is interested in the outer planets, like Jupiter, Saturn. The satellites of these planets, some satellites of these, have oceans below the crust, maybe 10 miles below, oceans bigger than the Pacific Ocean. Wow. So the thing is, if the Pacific Ocean or the oceans on Earth could have life, why can't these oceans have life? Because it's very similar. The Earth's oceans are mostly dark after a certain 1 kilometer or so. So these are also dark oceans. So I'm just saying that you have to find a common interest. But there are many missions that are happening, and so there are a lot of dialogue going on.
So we continue getting you updates from the United States. We'll be right back. Do stay with us.